Well, today is a very solemn anniversary of the Oxford High School shooting. 4 students were killed and several others injured. That brings up so many questions and emotions that we really need to make sure our kids are coping and getting the help and support that they need. I am joined by Birt, the president of SAD, Students Against Destructive Decisions, and also an expert on school safety and violence prevention. Thank you so much, Rick. How are you?
I'm well. I'm always great to be with you.
We are delighted that you're here. We really need you today. You know, we're hearing about mass shootings all the time, with school safety on the forefront of students and also parents' minds. How can kids prepare each day for school if they're fearful, Rick?
Yeah, I think there's multiple layers to this problem, and certainly we're seeing this more and more. Places that young people, students, kiddos once felt safe, movie theaters, schools, restaurants, other areas, are now places where we've seen carnage and horrific events happening all across our country. So it's sad. We're working to provide resources, training, and conversation starters for teens and parents alike so that they can really be prepared in 3 key ways. Number one, first of all, talk about the anxiety that our students are feeling as they re-enter the classroom. Talk about, particularly on anniversaries like this, the emotion that can be stirred, the post-traumatic stress that can come from that, and how we should handle those emotions. Secondly, talk about mental health in general. How should we be handling anxiety, depression, and all those other feelings that we have, especially now as the CDC tells us that 1 in 4 young people are struggling with a diagnosable mental health condition in a post-COVID world. And then lastly, our third tip is to talk about a plan. Obviously, we never know when tragedy or when a crisis can hit. So it's important that young people know how to respond if they're in an active shooter situation, how they should seek safety, and what a family can do to make sure each other stay safe.
And those are great ways also that parents can really help them work through their fear. You know, Rick, when kids hear about a threat that's, targeting their school or a student, what should they do?
The best thing to do is to speak up, to tell a trusted adult, whether that be someone in the guidance office, whether that's to report it to law enforcement. There are tons of services, including our partners at the Sandy Hook Promise, who have confidential tip lines that you can provide resources to and information on. You can also dial the national hotline 988. Just like you would dial 911 for a medical emergency, you can now dial 988 to talk with a certified healthcare provider, a mental health expert that can talk you through a number of crises. And if you feel like you're in immediate danger, obviously our message is to call 911 to get law enforcement involved so that we can keep everyone safe.
I like that. Yeah, that's a great tip. Rick, is there a certain type of culture that kids can really help create with their own peers to help lower the risk of violence?
Absolutely. This oftentimes goes back to school climate and making sure that everyone feels included. People who feel plugged in, like they're part of a group, are far less likely to participate in these lone wolf or these dangerous situations. So we each have a role to play in that, making sure that we're inclusive of our friends. If we see one of our friends or someone in our peer group maybe acting strangely, to inquire about them, to make sure we're taking care of them, not to take ownership of their feeling or their status of their mental health, but to help them find those resources. And then again, to speak up if we feel like someone might be in danger. It's not tattling or ratting someone out. It's making sure that they themselves are safe and that they're keeping others safe as well. So it really does start by saying good morning, by reaching out, by doing all those things we were taught growing up to make sure that people feel included. That's a great way to keep everyone safe as well.
I love that. I have to ask you on the other side of the spectrum, because this happens also. What if a student feels like they want to harm someone, or they feel like they can't go on? Can they reach out without being judged, or, they need some support as well?
Absolutely. That's a great point. Absolutely. Those resources I alluded to are there for those students as well. Studies continue to show us that at some point we're going to find ourselves in a mental health crisis, whether that's a panic attack, whether that's a moment of anxiety, whatever it might be. Different life circumstances, life changes oftentimes precipitate those changes in our mental health. So if you feel that urge, again, 988 is a great resource. You won't be judged. You can remain confidential. They'll stay with you and get you the resources you need. You can also talk with a school counselor, or I also remind folks that, a great thing to do is to talk with that primary healthcare physician as well. They're there to help you get the right resources in the medical space so that we can start to normalize our conversations around mental health the same way we talk about our physical health.
Yeah, thank you, Rick, so much for sharing this really life-saving advice with us. The takeaway, we don't want our kids to feel alone, like there's no help. Help is available if you need it. 988. 988. You can also reach out. Thank you, Rick. We appreciate you.
Always great to be with you. Thanks for having me.
You are so welcome. If you have any ideas on what you would like to see on our show, you can send them to us at WNEM-4pmnews@WNEM.com. Just use the subject 4 p.m. News Spotlight. Next on the news at 4, the state Supreme Court is delaying the January trial for James and Jennifer Crumbly. Why that case was ordered back to the Court of Appeals next. Miss a story? Well, you can catch up on our YouTube channel, and for the very latest updates, like us on Facebook and follow us on Instagram. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.